And even in my faith, I can wander, but I have to go back to the oasis. It's the oasis that I didn't create, but that is inside of me. Hello, everybody, and welcome to podcast number 102 of the Gordon and Cherise show. And it is so good to be back with you, honey. It feels like we've been away forever, but really, it hasn't been forever, at least not for those of you who are listening, because we have continued to air these podcasts, but there has been a little bit of a lapse between the last series and what we're shooting today.
Well, we had two sources of interruption, okay? And by the way, are you going to say 102 or are you going to say 102?
What do you prefer?
102, because we're going to get into some large numbers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay. Two things that have occurred in our life. Number one, I started to show everyone on the Better Living community the fact that I started stem cell treatments. So I've had one injection, and I haven't followed up since then because I'm going to take a different course. I'm going to go through a different stem cell treatment. I want to share the details of that.
Sure.
So that's why I've kind of withheld some information. So that's number one. Number two is the fact that I caught COVID.
Yes, you did.
And here I am. I've had both vaccinations. I've had a booster. We've really tried to take care of our health. And then I just got this last strain, and it knocked me down.
It did. It really, really did. And this is the first time that you've caught it. So we've been pretty fortunate, I guess, to not have it until now.
Right.
And I still don't understand why you got it. And
you didn't.
I didn't get it. I don't take that for granted. And I kept testing myself almost every day and did the quarantine with you. So, I thought for sure it may come because I'm with you, but,
Well, I think you also like testing me. It's like every time early in the morning, next thing you know, I'm seeing this Q-tip swab attacking
it's coming for your nose.
Attacking my nose.
It's coming.
And you want to know, is the COVID gone? Are you negative? And it's like, Cherise, do I have to do this again?
Well,
So,
I guess my gift is not nursing.
No, it's not. You can be quite aggressive. But the fact is this. I'm over COVID. The biggest thing for me that I still deal with a little bit as a residual is that I've always had fatigue, and I've dealt with lack of rest in my life and interrupted sleep patterns. So the COVID really knocked me down with the fatigue.
It seems like it attacks the weak spots.
It attacked all my weak spots. For me, it was not about having strep throat type symptoms or the sharp headaches, which I had both.
You didn't have anything in your lungs?
I had nothing in my lungs. The big thing for me is that my legs and my kidneys, they were on fire. And I was knocked down. But what I had to do is that I talked to the doctor and we went through various treatments. My big thing was I had to move forward with accepting the fact that I needed to rest because I did not want to have the 2-month strain of COVID.
That's right.
And to prolong this from getting better. So
wow.
I did nothing for almost a week and a half for sure.
And that was so hard for you.
That was extremely difficult because I'd like to do something every day. And I even got to the point I wasn't reading scripture. I could only stay awake for about an hour and a half. And then I was back to sleep for a few hours.
I've never seen you that way.
It really hit me hard.
But it certainly sets us up. It tees us up for the topic today, which is rest through your pain.
Yes, it does, Cherise.
And for you, it was a forced, abrupt rest. Because we were getting back from that stem cell treatment to the United States from Costa Rica. And I know that you were ready to hit the ground running before COVID got you. So everything, isn't that true with pain? Pain just interrupts. It changes life.
The uninvited guest.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so with rest, it's such an important topic. And Gordon, the world The world is tired. People are exhausted. There is just so much happening. And, I find it remarkable that, it even can happen with me, that you can sleep 8 hours, but absolutely feel exhausted when you wake up because the mind isn't stopping. There's a component to rest that is beyond the body just being in bed. Don't you think?
Absolutely. Here we are with this gospel of the good news. Mm-hmm. And part of the good news is that we get to enter into God's rest. Now, I'm being very vulnerable on this podcast since I've dealt with chronic pain and lack of rest for years.
You have no choice. You've set yourself up.
Well, yes, I did. But this is probably one of the weaker areas of my faith. Walking out my faith and bringing that into my lifestyle every day. Mm-hmm. I do not rest enough in God. I do not take that pause. Now, I know the parts that I've utilized. I know how to be obedient and by faith hand God as much as I can my all in all of who I am to Him. Okay? But there's many times, especially with pain over the last 3 decades, it's been very difficult to just move into that place of rest. But let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. No one has ever lived who has accomplished a work so great as that of Jesus Christ when He walked on this planet. No one ever bore the enormity of a burden of a mission as He did. Mm-hmm. Yet He gave Himself fully into the rest of His Father. Mm-hmm. Okay? So I ask the question, what is the essence of rest? Mm-hmm. How do you give yourself fully to the Lord when pain is interrupting, sometimes minute by minute, hour by hour, every aspect of your life?
It's a good question.
And that's what I have struggled with practically. Mm-hmm. But the answer is this, and we've gotten glimpses of it, and I'd like to get into a better sync of having rest with God because it's a forced practice, okay? The essence of rest is this. It's a confidence of faith. In other words, this confidence is not based on what we're doing to conquer the problems of the world or to reduce the anxieties or to eliminate our own pain or to calm it down where we can have that sense of tranquility, okay? It's about yielding to God in His creative process of life.
Yes.
And it takes faith.
Yes.
Now, I want you to think of this. When we have this confidence of faith, we've gotten tidbits of this. We've actually chewed on these nuggets of wisdom. It's about satisfaction and assurance. Because when you're satisfied, you're basically at rest in your spirit, no matter how much work you have to do, nor how much pain you might still have.
So how
you still feel that level of satisfaction.
How do you do that when you're in pain?
For me, it's when I'm one step ahead of the pain, one step in front of it, where the pain is not the all-consuming factor in my life. I can sense that satisfaction in God. I sense that satisfaction with the renewal of the mind and giving myself to Him. I have that at large parts of my life. Okay? The other part about assurance is this. When you're quite sure that your work is going to be successful or your life is going to turn out well, when you have that assurance, then you can be at rest.
That's so true.
So here's God.
So true.
This is all part of the confidence of faith.
Right.
When He's talking about our rest, A, are we satisfied, okay, with our lives, no matter how much work we have to do? And then B, do we have that assurance that everything's going to turn out all right?
I think there are so many people who have been trapped in trauma or who have had, even a physical pain or an emotional pain cycle where the question is, when is the next bomb going to drop off in my life? And it's like running from something that has never happened yet, but the mind is imagining it over and over and ruminating on something because of what has happened in the past. And so I find that saying that you're staying one step ahead of your pain, I think that is so important to remember instead of looking behind, thinking what bomb is about to blow up. And I have to catch myself in that cycle of thinking constantly, because so many people, if you have this expectancy of bad happening all the time, how does the power of faith work in that? If you expect bad, how do you open up your life for faith to enter in?
Right. You can't practice syncretism. You can't add a karma type thinking. If I do this, then this is the result. The universe will speak back to me.
Well, and if then.
Deductive reasoning.
Right.
And then add that, couple that with faith, with giving a full submission or surrender to God with your life. Mm-hmm. That's a contradiction. And that you can't practice that and truly enter into his rest.
Well, because if we believe that we're ultimately paying the penalty for all of our sins and that is going to catch up one day, then how do you enter rest? Because you're just going to run because you feel guilty or ashamed or afraid or alone or hunted down or in pain because you deserve it. How do you, so none of that kind of thinking brings about the goodness of God.
No, it doesn't. But it also, Cherise, it takes faith, honey, to enter into his rest.
I believe that.
It's a fight.
100%.
It is a fight. The world is opposed to that.
Isn't it funny that rest in itself can be a fight to get there?
Absolutely.
It seems like it is so opposed to the whole idea of rest, to fight to enter it. But that fight is actually fighting for your identity because you are worth the rest. You are worth it.
Absolutely. So when you're dealing with this pain, you're dealing with these emotional triggers that you're describing, mm-hmm. Okay? Pain a lot of times doesn't give you a lot of options in life. That's where you do feel like you're going to be overwhelmed with several different burdens. Mm. But when you enter his rest, you can develop the mindset to say, you know what? I might have pain, but suffering is a choice. Absolutely.
We've talked about this.
Exactly. And then when suffering becomes a choice, you can start seeing the satisfaction in the little things through a spirit of gratitude, mm-hmm. entering rest through faith. You can start seeing the little things on the inward parts grow that gives you strength and confidence in your relationship with Jesus Christ.
Yes, choosing the way, that your attitude through the suffering.
Do you remember when you first had a salvation experience?
I do.
What type of peace did you experience from that?
Well, I had an overwhelming sense of a connection with God. It was overwhelming. It was so beautiful. But for me, it wasn't just peace. I felt this darkness and light moment. Like I could experience. I really felt that maybe I was open to a discernment. And I could see things differently than how I saw them before. And so actually it was an amazing experience, but it's taken a lifetime and I am still not caught up to what that fully means because it's in process. It's a relationship.
Right.
It's continuous.
And your experience was certainly different than mine, Cherise.
You didn't expect that response.
I did not expect that response.
Why did you set me up for that one?
Here I am asking a question, expecting a certain type of answer.
Yeah,
okay.
no, I don't give you the typical, everything was just so perfect.
So that the audience could respond by saying, oh, I relate to that. Now let me listen more intently.
There actually, maybe people can relate that, that your salvation experience may not fit what seems to be the mold of some padded prayer. And maybe I had literally an evangelist who scared the hell out of me. I'm not joking. I was so scared after he spoke.
Can we say hell on our podcast?
We just did.
Okay.
I felt darkness and light. I really did. And I really wanted to be connected to God. I walked down that aisle. I really sincerely prayed. And I believe that in my life, some veil was lifted off. I really was sincere about praying, and I felt a connection. God was already there, but I connected.
Yes.
I said yes. But anyway, so yes, honey, there's a faith can be complicated.
Yes, it is. But do you mind if I share my experience a little bit?
I mean, yes.
Okay. You do mind.
I think we need to balance this conversation out.
Well, I know for me, when I said, Lord, I literally surrender myself to you, and I don't even understand everything about salvation. Mm-hmm. And here I was healthy, okay? So I'm surrendering everything to God. I had an overwhelming sense of peace that truly transcends all understanding. And it was this almost idea of finding true rest. Everything in me, okay? My passions were stilled. My imagination was restrained. My mind was steadied from all anxieties. I felt any wavering that I had was completely controlled. I felt like that I could endure whether times were difficult in times of trials and tribulation or during times of success and wealth and anything else. It didn't matter. I felt like I found this gift of peace that I knew only came from God, and it was part of his salvation.
That's beautiful.
Okay, that's what I experienced with rest. And when I relate that, walking out my salvation today, a lot of times we're so busy, we're so caught up with things, we have to spend dedicated time to get in sync with entering into his rest and experiencing the benefits of that peace, the benefits of true rest,
sure,
and how we're going to deal with things constantly. And I need to do a better job again. I can just tell you that right now. It is something that is so valuable in your walk of faith. So when we're talking about suffering as a choice, what would be 3 different ways that I would walk to get into that posture of rest?
Tell me. I'm certainly not going to answer it for you. I might lead you off the path again.
Well, honey, I don't mind if you lead me off the path. It's absolutely okay. Number 1 for me, and I'm going to repeat these different things because not everyone is listening to every podcast. But number 1 would be go inwardly. Press that red button that's within you. When life is too difficult.
Is that the eject button?
No, it's not the eject.
Okay.
It's almost like a panic button. It's hitting that red button going, I'm going to stop everything right now. So if you're going to stop everything, it's not to give up. It's not to disregard responsibilities. It's to stop the chaos and the noise and the warfare that might be in your mind, whether it's by physical pain, emotional eruption, or having the wrong thoughts that are mentally being shot through part of your brain. The point is this: quit debating yourself, or quit debating the fact that you might have to help a loved one who's dealing with pain. I would say go inwardly and get to that posture of rest so that you can walk through the middle of your trial.
That's so good. And as I find in our own life, that we grow to the level of the problem that we're in. Walking through the middle of it instead of avoiding it. it creates that moment where you become bigger than the size of that trial. Now, there's going to be another one, but going through it, it doesn't mean that you have to be out of rest to walk through the middle of the trial. In fact, I think sometimes it can be more restful because you know you're in the middle of something, and it is fiery and it is pain, but you know where you're at. You're choosing to be in the middle of it instead of running the other way.
Right. And I know for me, when I'm in that place and I've gone inwardly, and I know that I have a big trial, I think sometimes it's easy to become discouraged when I have to help someone else with their trials. Because a lot of times we're carrying such a burden, it's almost like, I can't take another load. I'm worn out myself. I need rest myself. And I know that you and I have had, recently we're helping to caretake with family members. Okay? It's not that we don't love family members, but not every part of their lives can overtake our lives and just throw us against the seashore where we have no idea where we're going to land. A lot of times we have to do this, and I think this podcast is apropos for those people that are dealing with the elderly, okay? You got to find rest for yourselves so that you can have a vision and that you can be willing to take on things hand in hand with the other people that are also maybe weakened or inadequate or are not as strong as you are in your faith.
Yeah.
That's how the body of Christ comes together. So I would say don't be afraid of taking on a heavier load once in a while. I'm not saying take on loads and burdens that are absolutely going to sink us. But as you mentioned before, a lot of times when we're being tested by faith, it's like the salmon that spins around. Instead of going downstream, it's going upstream, and it's going against the stream, and it's developing stronger muscles.
Yes.
But it's more tasty. It's better to eat.
Yeah.
Okay. Their reproduction system is different on how they're doing things, on how they're creating their species. A lot of times we're used to going downstream and saying, okay, God, where's the rest? I'm doing nothing. I'm floating downstream. And sometimes he's still calling us, you've been rested, but do you have the assurance that things are going to work out okay? Do you have the satisfaction in who I am and how I've created you and how much I love you? Do you have the satisfaction for life? And then are you going to go ahead and turn around and move in a different direction that you didn't anticipate? Are you going to do that if you're obedient to the call that I have on your life?
Right.
Okay. Many times when we say, okay, let's just get lazy with our rest, I hate to use these words, but we start walking in disobedience.
Yeah.
We become complacent with our faith.
Even disobedience to our own self.
Yes.
We disobey the truth that's in us, that God put there.
Right.
So,
and then what we do a lot of times is we say, okay, religion, we're going to adopt you. Christian religion or Judeo-Christian religion, we're going to adopt you, and now we have to practice the Sabbath, and here's how we define it exactly, and this is how we'll enter your rest, and here's the law-bearing yoke we're going to put around us, and things get very confused. And guess what? That doesn't line up with pain.
Well, all that sounds like is increasing the controlled circumstances instead of entering into rest. Everything you just described makes me exhausted, and it makes me frustrated because there's no life in that.
I agree. So number 1 was go inwardly. Okay, press that red button. Number 2, go on to spiritual maturity.
Yeah.
Don't just stay at the elementary level about the teachings of Christ, about your salvation. Start pressing on to maturity.
There's so much more to discover in your faith.
There is, and pressing on means going on to spiritual maturity. It's not saying that your salvation experience in the early years of the beginning wasn't important.
Right.
It's not saying that you should disregard the beautiful gift of peace that you may have had that transcends all understanding. It's saying get on the right path of your life regardless of the painful suffering or the trials that you have.
Right.
You can still develop a confidence of faith.
Good.
And then number 3, present day thinking. We're going to keep going over these concepts with our groups because the present day thinking is this: what are our priorities? If we try to fix our future, how do we rest?
And I've already talked about, thinking about the past being and then expecting a bomb to drop off all the time.
Right.
So present day thinking, it doesn't come with a bomb. It comes with a promise.
That's right.
It comes with a promise that you can make it for this day. That God has grace and sufficiency for you in this day.
Amen, Cherise. Absolutely. And I think for me on the present day thinking, and it comes from the Matthew chapter 6 verse, but seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. So do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will take care of itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. God was fully aware of the troubles that we all take on. And so was Jesus. He was fully aware of the task that he had to take on.
And he chose to.
And he chose to deal with death and resurrection to save our lives, to save humanity.
He didn't do it for himself.
No, he didn't.
Yeah.
Okay? It was an act that helped a whole community. Now, I want you to think of this about rest. When we start to rest, it's when we're starting to unite our religious, faithful beliefs also with a sense of morality. See, morality is not full of chaos. It's not full of confusion. It's not full of gender options. It's not full of a lot of different things. And when you start adding those two components together, that's when you can begin to walk in a new world. In other words, there's a life or death leap of the soul of who we are. And we leap into this great unknown aspect of this ruling world that seems to be around us. God shares the power of rest by saying, even though you're leaping into something where this ruling world can take over your life, it seems like, when you enter me, you still get the benefits of the kingdom of God.
That's right.
You still get the benefits.
That's right.
And you grow in morality. You grow in a love for the people around you. You grow in a respect for man, as well as you're bringing forth your religion, your faithful beliefs into a practical lifestyle. And what's neat is we can do it with boldness. Rest doesn't mean we just keep our mouth closed. It means that we can still boldly shout, we rejoice even if trials are there. We rejoice even if pain is there. We're making choices. Suffering is a choice.
Good.
Okay? So those three things are this. Number one, go inwardly. Number two, go on to spiritual maturity. And number three, implement present day thinking.
That's
These
so
are
good.
effective ways
Yep.
to walk in the strength and power of God's rest.
I love it.
So we're coming to the conclusion of today's
There's so much
program.
more to say.
There's tons more, and maybe it's on another program. How does
I think
that sound?
it might happen that way.
It's going to happen that way. What valuable takeaway do you have?
You know, when I research and when I read and honestly, when I think about the topic of rest, it's not an object. It's not a thing. Rest is a person. Rest is found in Christ and in the finished works of God. And so I think about this as you go on to spiritual maturity, you begin to realize that rest isn't about placing your feet up on the sofa or just laying in bed, but you're entering into a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
And I think of Matthew 11:28 in the Passion Translation. I love this spin on this verse. Just listen to it. Are you weary, carrying a heavy burden? Come to me. I will refresh your life, for I am your oasis. And in the dictionary from Oxford Languages, an oasis is defined a fertile spot in a desert where water is found. And on vocabulary.com, rest is defined as a noun. It's a shelter serving as a place or safety and security. So think of this. Christ is saying, come to me. I am your shelter and a place of safety and security.
Mm-hmm.
So you're entering into a relationship. You can't do this on your own.
No, you cannot.
I've tried. And even in my faith, I can wander. I can walk straight away from this rest and try to solve it all on my own. But I have to go back to the oasis. It's the oasis that I didn't create, but that is inside of me through God.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage each one of you who are weary to go back to that living water today. It's available for this day in this moment.
Very good. My valuable takeaway also comes from the beach in Costa Rica. And it's when we were dealing with some difficult times. And then even though it was raining and a hurricane was going to hit the shores, we walked out in the rain onto the beach and we saw the most beautiful sunset that you can look at.
Mm-hmm.
And we just sat there in awe. But I realized at that moment the importance of spiritual maturity. It's when the quality of your soul learns to accept the conditions of life, whether hard or soft. And by doing that and entering into his rest, that propels you forward in movement of faith.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
And that is what I learned from that. And that's what I take away from rest. So how do you get a hold of Gordon and Cherise?
Go ahead and answer that.
Oh, Cherise, I always like to ask you. I would do this. I would hit the website, gordonandcherise.com. Click onto that and you can find our podcasts, our Better Living community. You can sign up for YouTube. You can hit Facebook, even our larger site that we have, the Better Living Despite Chronic Pain portion. You can get a hold of us in any way possible. We have our book there that you can purchase. It's a great way to get a hold of us. I'm going to announce this now because it'll be out within probably 6 weeks, but we are developing an app. And we do have one course right now, an online instruction course that I hope people actually purchase, keep close to their hearts,
Yes.
and follow some things where you can move from a place of pain into a place of transformation.
And these courses are set up in about 10 to 12 minute or so increments, right?
A little longer on a few.
On a few, but they're designed so differently than our podcast. It's power packed, and it's very motivational. It's very instructional. But Gordon, it's very valuable.
Very valuable.
Yes.
I'm sharing the depths of wisdom that have been in me for almost 3 decades, from scripture, from reading, from practical aspects of being a doctor, from being a patient to moving into transformation.
That's right.
Okay. A lot of people would not know that I'm not supposed to be as well off as I am right now. Okay. Even though I still struggle with chronic pain. And so these online courses are motivational. It's a way to also subsidize some of the expenses that we have for our platform. But more importantly, when you're going to benefit from something, there's a cost. And you have to give your all, not just give some money financially for the course, but actually start changing your lifestyle. Start making those practical steps. We're making some teaching for people not for our benefit. It's for your benefit.
That's right.
So join us. We're excited about it. So we're at the conclusion of today's podcast.
Yes, we are.
And we'll see you next week,
That
Cherise.
sounds great. We'll see you next time.